Life is complex. So is our mental health. It cannot be understood by diagnosis alone. Our philosophy is treat the person, not the mental illness.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Humanizing Mental Health. This is Jeremy Alcorn.
I'm Trent Akers.
My name is Menno Millets.
So we have someone joining us, someone that actually I have known for a very long time, but we'll get there. Today's episode, we're really connecting back to something that we talked about in the very first episode. In that first episode, we were describing what do we mean by humanizing mental health, and we discussed some specific kind of foundations on that, and Trent, I thought you would kind of elaborate on how that links into today.
Certainly. Well, kids, if we're going to flip back in time, what we actually talked about, if we go back in the old Wayback Machine with Professor Peabody, hopefully that wasn't too far back for all of you, we talked about interpersonal neurobiology, which was an idea coined by Professor Daniel Siegel. Now, basically what that is it's the idea that there's basically three parts of ourselves. There's the embodied brain, there's the connection to other people, which of course is the interpersonal part, and also to its connection to our wider environment, or to the ground, to the earth. So really, if you're kind of looking at it, it's that human beings aren't really in isolation, rather we're part of a greater web. And you can almost think about it in terms of the Lion King. You know, it's the circle of life, it's the connection to us all. And I'm going to throw it back to Jeremy before I start to sing.
You know, I had the song going through my head as well, I agree. I would mess something up here if I tried to sing. So as we're coming back to this idea, we're really talking about one piece of interneurobiology today, and that part being the connections that we have with other people, and we've referred to that multiple times as a tribe. For me, where this came from, or the starting point for me, was when I was reading a book by Bessel van der Kolk, and in this he's talking about the effects of trauma, and he was talking about the use of medications, and what he said was medications will never be a cure because they won't fix the issues of connection that we have inside ourselves, or the issues of connections that we have with our tribe. And that was like, it really resonated for me. And so today we are going to have a conversation about really what does a tribe do? How does a tribe work? What are the effects of that? And one of the things that's interesting, we have an interesting case study, that is because my friend Menno here, he had the opportunity to live in multiple places in the world, and has a comparison point around what that influence is like. So let me give a little bit of an introduction. In fact, today is the first day that Trenton and Menno are meeting. The first day that Menno and I met was 29 years ago. Whew.
Oh, wow. Long friendship.
I know, right?
I am that old.
You are that old.
And, honestly, I wouldn't, I'm not saying you guys are old. I was looking at you guys, I'm like, these are two young, vital men in front of me.
Yeah, so it was 1993.
Yeah.
And,
right.
Excuse me. Menno had moved from the Netherlands, and I just remember I was over at another friend's house, and there was seemed like this pretty cool, quiet guy that laughed when everyone else did, but didn't say much. I didn't know at first because he didn't know a ton of English.
Okay. Wow. So just hearing that right there, I'm wondering what it was like for you, Menno, because it sounds like you really immersed yourself into a brand new culture. And it was like, okay, you're trying to feel out the room. And I'm wondering what it was like for you, because Jeremy said it sounded like you didn't know a lot of English. So what was it like to interact with people?
Oh, this is such an interesting question. So first off, thanks for having me on the show, and Trent, awesome to meet you. Let's talk a little bit about what it's like to be in a room, being the quiet guy. So yeah, not knowing the language, of course, you're always a little bit careful. You don't want to say too many silly things. But yeah, one of the reasons I got really excited to talk with you a little bit was I've been trying to sort out personality. So what makes a person a quiet person? What makes me a quiet person? And as I started reflecting a little bit about my own personality, I realized I've had quite a few different personalities. It's not that I have a split personality, so I'm not on the show trying to say, okay, why am I Dr. Jekyll and Hyde?
Yeah, let's be clear here. This is not about dissociative identity disorder. No, Menno is a complete and whole individual. He's not dissociative in that way.
Yeah. So what you said, Jeremy, is I was a pretty quiet guy. So I am a fairly quiet guy, but I haven't always been a pretty quiet guy. So personality, I'll go back a little bit in time. So I grew up in the Netherlands and lived there for a good chunk of my life, but obviously now I'm in Canada. And in between the Netherlands and Canada, I lived in a few different countries. So from when I was 8 years old to about 14 years old, we traveled a fair bit. So we probably moved back and forth about 4 times. And each of those 4 times, I ended up being quite a different individual. My personality was different. So starting in the Netherlands, totally outgoing, sportsy guy, always getting into a little bit of trouble. I used to think I was still a pretty good guy, but I was always kind of pushing the boundaries. Then I moved to Indonesia for the first time, and all of a sudden, I was the funny guy. I'd never been a funny guy, but somehow, my first trip to Indonesia, I was known as the funny guy.
Is it all right if I ask you a couple questions about that?
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things, and maybe I zoned out a little bit, I was just trying to put this in a timeline. About how old were you when you moved to Indonesia?
So the first time would have been about 8 years old.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And you said you were back and forth a couple of times.
Back and forth.
And so, because one of the things I wonder about is the group that you ended up connecting to there. Like, usually there's some kind of default community that someone gets associated with in some way. And wondering about like what your tribe looked like.
Like what it looked like. So I'm trying to figure out why I was the funny guy. And I think I remember tripping the first time I walked into the classroom and people were laughing. And so then I started making a joke about it. And next thing I knew, I was hanging out with the funny kids in the class.
Right there. And I think that is so key. And I think that happens for so many of us. It's that initial impression. Because as they say, and I mean, I think it may be common knowledge. I don't know if this is true, but the impressions that we form basically happen within the first 5 seconds.
Yep.
Yeah. And so for you, it's like, okay, I tripped, it fell, I made a joke, and it was like, okay, that initial connection was made, and it sounded like it was basically just strengthened over time. So maybe, and I mean, this is just an idea, you can tell me if I'm right or I'm wrong here, but it was like, okay, that's my in. And so you kind of just fell into that pattern. And maybe you weren't initially funny all the time, but that's how people saw you, and that was the associations that they made with you. And then they just accessed part of your personality.
Right? Isn't it so true? Within the first 5 seconds, tripped, made a joke, people connected to that. And then the people that gravitated towards me were naturally the tribe of people that were pretty lighthearted and joking. So for the entire time I lived in Indonesia for that trip, I became part of the funny crowd. And that was my personality. And I swear it happened within like the 5-second first impression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, I wonder like how, and I don't know if you would be able to get back into this experience in this level or not. It just sounds like a rather vulnerable thing, you know, to be presenting yourself, meeting this new group of people, and probably one of the worst ways that could turn out is if I messed something up. And it sounds like you found, you know, humor as a way to avoid vulnerability, and it just worked.
And it worked. So yeah, for the whole year, I was Mr. Funny Guy.
I'm a little bit curious with that too. Like when you became Mr. Funny Guy, how did that arc? If you can think back, how did that change your perception? Like, because if you're always in that mode, like, did you find yourself noticing more funny things, or just kind of, because you said you had that group, like,
So as a kid, I would say I wouldn't have noticed a thing. All I remember about that time was being more interested in getting people to laugh, being more interested in laughing myself. But as a kid, I would say you just live your life and you don't even, I wouldn't have said I was the funny guy as a kid. It's more me now as an adult looking back and trying to understand personalities a little bit. But while you're in it, it just happens so naturally, so organically. I didn't realize that the funny people were the ones that I gravitated towards or gravitated towards me. So I think when you're in it, sometimes you don't even realize that you're creating this set of connections with the people around you. So it's taking this step back with you guys to look back and say, so how did it occur? It seems obvious now, but at the time...
In fact, there's something specific with this I think is important to point out. Like what you're describing is called procedural learning. Mm-hmm. That is, you learned something without a cognitive component in which you understood what you learned. Same sort of thing that happens when people learn to pick up items or learn how to walk. Why do we walk? We walk because the big people around us are standing. And so at some point in time, we push ourselves off the floor to do what they're doing. And we don't somehow have somebody walking around going, okay, now move your left foot, curl your left big toe.
Yeah. It's all innate and it's all biology too. And it's all about the community, like you learning to want to be part of the group, not wanting to be the outlier. Because with a lot of that too, like if you weren't the funny guy and if you didn't have that identity, sort of the social isolation, so we're always sort of gravitating towards copying and being a part of the group because we don't want to have that feeling.
Right. In fact, we are talking about attachment.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's what we're describing. We're describing how attachment wires us, and really that is in these procedural ways. They're in ways that we don't necessarily understand. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm always wondering, so is it healthy? And especially as a kid, how much of your personality or how much of your connections are a little bit just luck? You happened to connect with people right off the bat. And how much of it is our own wills? So now as adults, we probably have a little bit more control over the people we seek out. What do we look for in terms of support? But I think as a kid, it's so interesting. You're not sitting there analyzing your every move or why you behave the way you did.
Well, I think, and I mean, you can probably corroborate this with me, Jeremy, but I mean, I think a lot of that sort of introspective thought that comes as we age and as we go, because you started that when you were 8 years old, so you weren't quite into your teenage years really when the frontal lobe is really coming online, so you were more and more limbic, so you were just doing what comes natural. It's, as we talked about in a previous episode, it's basically the same idea when a baby gets born. They're not consciously thinking, they're just doing what they need to do to survive. So it's all about, you were doing what you need to survive socially, and then afterwards when you do reach, I think for some people it's around age 14, 15, 16, sometimes people don't always get there, but then you're able to kind of sit back and reflect, and sometimes that can almost be where anxiety can start for some, because you have sort of that angst of who am I, and sort of where am I going, that sort of idea.
Yeah, for sure. It totally makes sense. Like, in fact, what you're describing in your experiences is the developmental process towards that part of the brain developing, and it actually determines how that part of the brain develops. Does it end up being able to help us to regulate ourselves? And that's going to be determined by those interpersonal environmental experiences as our genes get turned on and off based on the environment that we are in.
Good old epigenetics.
Yes, epigenetics. Mm. So you were saying at 8, this was your process. And what about the evolution of that then? Because it sounds like you had this during actually a very important developmental part of your life when you were young. You were exposed to a variety of environments.
So Funny Guy was the first experience. The second experience, so after that year that we'd been in Indonesia, back to the Netherlands, there for a little bit, and off we went again. Second trip to Indonesia. So I was all ready to be the funny guy again. But instead of being the funny guy, we ended up at recess playing some sports. And in the Netherlands, I don't know if you ever heard the game, but it's not basketball. It's a thing called korfbal. A game too where you have to grab a ball.
Say that one more time. It's called what?
It's korfball. You should totally Google it.
Did you say Korf?
Korf? It is.
You made that up.
No, it is a real thing.
I'm like, all I can think of right now is Harry Potter with the quaffle.
I'm telling you. Sometimes I think he's just messes with me. It's like, you know what's going to happen here? People are going to be listening to this. And they'll be like, oh, this Dutch guy, he just pulled one over on them. Korfball.
Yeah. No, funny enough, it's the Dutch word for basket. So as far as I'm concerned, basketball is supposed to be called korfball. But anyway, so you've got to toss this ball into a basket. And I got super lucky during recess. I scored a couple times. And from there on, people were convinced I must have been a jock because I'm short. The audience can't see me, but I'm a short guy. So they said, who is this little 5'0" guy that's scoring these baskets? And for the next year, I wasn't Mr. Funny Guy. I was invited to all the sports teams. Crazy.
Right there. Like I'm hearing that, and all I can think of is you tripped first. That was comedy, and then you sunk a basket. And how our environment can actually influence our physical ability, because you think about it with crowds at whether it be any sort of sporting event, like if you're cheered on, that's actually been shown to actually improve an athlete's ability. So really it's that social connection there leading right back straight into biology.
Totally right. There's a reason why it's called home court advantage. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like you truly get better. I don't know what it is, but we watch these cheesy movies sometimes with the coach believing in the players, and it's that can-do mentality. It is not cheese. This is real. Like,
and
it's
if
real
it
stuff.
is cheese, I like cheese, so I'm all right with that.
It's a good kind of cheese.
Good old Canadian cheese too.
No, what are you talking about here? We're talking about Gouda, right? Some Gouda cheese.
Absolutely.
All cheese is Gouda.
But some cheese is more Gouda than others.
Yeah. But yeah, how does that belief in yourself translate to truly becoming better at sports? Because I swore within that year, looking back, I was good at sports. In the Netherlands, would I have been good at sports? I don't know, not more than anything else. But when people see you that way, you see yourself that way. I don't know, you start thinking about it, you start dreaming about it maybe. I don't know what it is, but you truly start to act in a certain way and you accelerate your abilities significantly.
You know, it's interesting you say that because, having been through the teen years together, I would have never have guessed that because, playing football and hockey and basketball, it's just like Menno's got the ball. Well, half the team is going to need to be there to be able to stop him from running that ball further down the field.
So as I'm hearing that, even though with you, like the part of these identities, whether it be the comedy guy or the sports guy, even though they came to the forefront, it sounds like part of them were almost lingering kind of in the background and would come out at different times, almost like actors kind of coming onto a stage.
Could be. Imagine how much we have inside of us, all of us have inside of us, right? We just don't get to tap into it probably too often. Sometimes it takes a bit of luck or moving to a different country, but the potential we have within us, I think, is just amazing. And then bringing it back to sort of that idea of the tribe, if you've got some people that are sometimes pointing that out, it makes it that much easier to pull it out of you a little bit.
Well, and right there, like as soon as you mentioned how you kind of internalize that, and I mean, the one thing that I like when I think of internalization, that really speaks to, if you go from sort of a social justice perspective about whether or not you can internalize positive things, or you can also internalize oppression too. Like even for me as a person with a disability, how I'm perceived within my outer community when I was a child, and what were those strengths and what were those social ties, and if that was a negative perspective versus, for me, I had stronger ties with my family at home. So even though there was those two competing identities, one was stronger than the other because that was the stronger social connection with me, and that was part of who I identified with.
Sure. In fact, I think that this is an important spot that we could jump into here, in which we're talking about that. And what you just really suggested rings true of the data from Gordon Neufeld and Gabor Mate, in which they are talking about how potent attachment is, and that's really what you're describing, Menno, is the effects of this group on me and how I become who I am, and peers. Are you really talking about peers? And then Trent, you described this in terms of talking about family, and we've had this movement away from our families being the core attachments. We've had, this idea that kids need to socialize with other kids so that they can learn how to socialize, so they can learn how to be independent. How are they supposed to learn anything from another kid?
Yeah, well, and I mean, right there, I think that's really important. I mean, if you go from a sociological perspective, they talk about the 3 levels of socialization, where the family is the base. Then you go out into the wider community, and then you do your own self-socialization. So really, what I'm hearing from you, and I completely agree with you, Jeremy, is that you can't skip stage 1. You have to have stage 2 in order to go on to stage 3,
Sure.
because you need that bedrock to have that core base of who you are.
Yeah.
And I'm almost wondering for you, Menno, when you were going through and going to all of these different environments, and you were going back and forth between the Netherlands and Indonesia, what was it? How important was your family to you throughout those transitions?
Hugely important. So they're probably the base that you really come back to, right? So I think if it's a safe base that you come back to where you feel comfortable, being able to go out and experiment a little bit and have some fun, I think truly makes it easier to experience things and even stumble a little bit. It's okay. You can come back home.
That's brilliant. You, holy cow.
We're going to compete over each other.
That's brilliant.
What just
Okay,
happened?
I'll let you go, Trent. You go first.
Oh no, because right there, like all I can hear is Mary Ainsworth and John Bowlby when it comes to secure attachment. Because you go out, you explore, you find new things, and you and I talked about the other day, sort of the circle of security.
Yeah.
And that sort of need to kind of come back when you're not feeling secure. And that's how you're able to really regulate yourself. Because for you, like, you were going out there and you were finding that. But I'm also wondering, I'm just imagining, like, Menno as, this little kid coming home. You had this experience. And I can imagine at some point, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but they kind of were that base and maybe kind of helped you solidify that identity or gave you that security so you could go out there and create who you are.
Oh man, like that's exactly what I was thinking too, Trent. I like what you just said in those few words, Menno. I don't think like the depth of what you how you just summarized that. There's a ton of research that has years put together to come to the conclusion that you just said, that if I am secure in my family, then I can take chances. Because what we need in our world is, it's like we're walking a tightrope and we need a net. Right. We don't need a punishing, harsh parents to teach us. That's not what teaches us. We're taught by the way we're treated. And if we have that net underneath of us, we're going to be willing to walk the tightrope, and we're knowing that if I fall, then I'm going to be okay.
Absolutely. And I mean, right there, if we're talking about different about that net, we can't help but talk about authoritarian, authoritative. And I always forget the other two, uninvolved, and then what's the fourth type of parenting?
I would love to say that I could just say, but I don't, off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Yeah, no.
Jellyfish? It might be jellyfish.
No.
Or maybe it's jelly sandwich. I'm sorry. I went off on a tangent.
Yeah. But no. But yeah, like that's sort of the idea when it comes to different parenting styles. You don't want your net to be harsh where you bounce and then you fall off. And you don't want it to be so loose that it has nothing there. It's kind of sort of that perfect base where it gives you a bit of bounce, and a little bit of sternness so that you're able to learn and grow.
Yeah, the summary is parents need to be bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind.
Perfect.
Yeah. So coming back to your story, though, in terms of moving through your different environments.
Hey, I want to ask you a question before
Sure.
we move on. So having an awesome family that we just described, that's great. Many of us don't have it. Or now that I'm an adult, I don't have that anymore. So what should I do to try to still build
sure.
that safety?
Yeah. So
now as a 40-some-year-old
yeah.
guy.
So the first part is, let's say I didn't have that, or let's say I thought that I had that, but actually I realized that there's ways in which I felt insecure. Like, for example, I felt like I needed to act or be a certain way to be loved. Or there's certain events that happened that brought a certain perspective. For example, in my own life, my brother passed away from sudden infant death syndrome, and then I was, in my experience, I was the son that lived, and I was the only boy, and there was no intent or purpose. There's just dynamics that play out that influence you from that attachment foundation. So that first part is recognizing that I need to look in the rearview mirror to understand myself, and be able to understand, okay, this is the way that I developed. I can't be different until I understand the procedures that were learned. I take a look at and I make those procedures, that procedural learning, a little bit more overt for myself. Now they're not just in a blind spot. That I'm in a place in which I can see how my patterns play out, and that allows me to, the word is differentiate from it, to become, and to see that inside part connection connects to me. Now I can start to connect to other people in a different way.
Well, and you were almost doing that already. I mean, where you're kind of looking back and you're kind of thinking about, what is your story? You were kind of, again, using a narrative perspective, it's kind of going back and reading those previous chapters, and rather than being a character, a passive character, saying to yourself, how can I, what can I learn from this? How can I then be sort of an author and an active participant in that narrative moving forward?
Yeah, makes sense. Because I tell you, I think one of the things that I feel that on a personal level I've lost a little bit is that faith that you can go out there and experiment and have fun, and it's okay, you bump your knee, you just run back home and somebody's going to put a little Band-Aid on it and, and say, go get him next time again, champ.
Right, because
So
now
I find
you
it harder.
are that bigger, wiser, stronger person.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. For some adults, too, that attachment figure can even come with a partner, where you can be attachment figures for each other too as well. And sometimes that's where, like, when it comes down to the attachments, or when you have a partner, that sometimes they can be a good attachment figure for you, or at times too they can even exacerbate those issues too as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I am curious, because I know that you, having known you for 29 years, I know that you ended up in some other moves and adventures in your life. In fact, it's kind of curious, almost like one of those movies that starts at one point, and then we flash back and we come back around.
All right, so do we want to fast forward to Canada?
No, well, not necessarily. I don't necessarily know all your story. Let's just see where it went after Indonesia, and kind of what your journey was like from there.
Yeah, so I would say with every move, though, a little bit quieter. Because with all of the fun, being the funny guy, being the sportsy guy, lots of missteps too, things not working out. So I would say over time, I felt like the dangers of being out there and something going wrong got a little bit heavier. The baggage got a little bit bigger. So I became slowly a little bit more reserved. Instead of going out there, maybe take a look and see how others are doing it, and then trying to adapt. So maybe trying to figure out which tribe I wanted to be a part of, not just fall into the first tribe that you literally stumble into. Interestingly, that I became a bit more introspective, even though I was in these in these very interesting places where there was lots of external stimuli that was interesting. I was actually retreating a little bit more with just about every move, and then even coming back to the Netherlands, I would just, became a little quieter. So that's the quieter guy is probably the individual that Jeremy got to meet a little bit.
Yeah. No, and I mean, as I hear that, like, as you started out, correct me if I'm wrong, when you were 8 years old. So I mean, it's kind of as you were going, you're learning a little bit, and then too, I'm also wondering, like, because when you and Jeremy met, I forget, how old did you say you were?
So 14.
15.
15. All right. So that's like right in the throes of adolescence.
Yeah. In fact, it's in that second most important point of attachment. So 0 to 6, and then the adolescent years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of attachment, developmental process in attachment. That is.
Yeah, very interesting. So yeah, the story, Jeremy, about coming to Canada. So I want to talk a little bit about the education system, and actually how much your education affects you, or the school that you attend affects you. So the sciences in the Netherlands are a little bit ahead of North America. So I mean, like the math, the physics, and the chemistry, all of that is a bit ahead. So I came to Canada in the second semester of grade 10. So I was behind some credits, and what the principal had figured out is I could still end up graduating with my class as long as I caught up on some credits. And the way they were going to let me do that was to say, you can take directly, even though you're in grade 10, you can take directly Math 30 or Chem 20 or Bio 20. And if you pass, we'll give you the credits for the 10 level as well. So here I was already a pretty quiet guy. And then to catch up, I needed to take like a Math 30 class. So of course the first impression in high school was that there's this wacky kid from Europe coming in who must be like this super intelligent person.
No pressure, man. No pressure.
No pressure.
And you're in with like grade 12 students.
Grade 12 students scared, sitting in the back of that classroom trying not to be noticed.
In fact, can I connect with that? Because this really holds back to some specific things about attachment, and that is, how does attachment form? First is proximity. That is, you have a shared space. And the second step is sameness. So here you are thrown into a very new, different environment. Don't speak the language. You do to a certain degree, but it's not a honed skill. And you're put into with much older students, and you're also set apart to a certain degree as this is the smart kid, the guy that, who's 15 and gets to, Doogie Howser this.
Yeah. That same smart kid that as a jock, when I was the sports jock, would make fun of the smart kid. So yeah, I was not in my element.
And sameness was not a part of the scenario at that point.
Could not get sameness.
So then there would be a disconnect, a position in which I am not attached. I'm different there. Yeah. I'm not a part of this.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, right there too, in terms of the sameness, like what I'm really hearing there too is those other identities sort of developed naturally, whereas with this one, it was like ascribed onto you. It's like, I didn't even get to try on, the lab coat or the nerdy glasses or whatever you're going to say. You basically showed up to school and they're like, here's your identity. Have fun.
Yeah, right? Like
I am telling you, you're the smart kid.
You are the smart kid. So it's not all bad. So fast forwarding a little bit, even though it maybe not have been in the beginning a very positive feeling for me, I did get to feel smart.
Sure.
So yet again,
it influenced you.
Yeah. Whether it was positive, negative, it doesn't matter. It super influenced me. By the end of high school, I was a pretty smart kid somehow. And when I would have taken the test in the Netherlands, I would have been probably average. Just barely hanging on to average. You take the tests 3-4 years later, and the tests are saying, not super smart, but like you're well above the average. And again,
and humble too, apparently.
No, trust me. I am
did you
not
notice
a
how you
super
said
smart
that?
guy.
Like you intentionally didn't say that you were too smart.
I'm not a super. In fact, most of the time, I think, when are people going to find out I'm really the same dumb kid that I would have been back in the Netherlands?
Yeah.
So I almost feel like there's this pedestal that got put up too high, and I've been trying this whole time to try to
in fact,
say
that's like
true.
really important, like that's a really important thing that sinks into you. That is one of those, procedures that you learn. You go, do I really have to prove that I'm smart? That's curious. One thing that it just really jumps out to me that I wonder if this is true, and that is, it seems like that last move was the hardest in terms of how you experienced it. The one to Canada was just harder than the rest.
I think it was. And I think you said it. So even though I had been in Indonesia, which is Canada compared to the Netherlands is way more similar than Indonesia would be to the Netherlands. But yet, that sameness, I did not feel that tribe, because probably in the beginning, I feel like I never did make a tribe. I was afraid to join any tribe, and maybe it was the smart kid tribe that I wasn't that interested in joining, or whatever it was. But it took me a long time to get a sense of comfort. And actually, it's where you come in, Jeremy. You ended up reaching out, and I think we just ended up playing a whole bunch of games. We ended up laughing, watching movies, but finally creating a connection with you and some of your friends, started creating a tribe that felt a lot more wholesome, and it wasn't just only one thing, not just the smart kid or the jock kid. It was a way more encompassing. So you did a lot for me in that scared 14-year-old, 15-year-old, vulnerable, hormones are raging, just wanting to fit in, but not be noticed.
In fact, I remember we met at someone else's house, and then we done a couple things together. But for some reason, I just felt like you were just a person that I wanted to be in my life. And so my family was going to a family reunion where you're going to Utah. And I remember I asked you first, which was a mistake. I said, hey, do you want to go to Utah with us? And then I came back and talked to my parents, and my dad was like, what are you talking about? And we're just going, just the three. And I was like, my heart felt so sick. Because I knew when I talked to you that it was an exciting thing. But then my mom said, hey, nah, I think it's a good idea for us to have someone come with us, and then that came back around. In fact, do you remember that? Do you remember me saying, "Oh, actually, my parents said no"?
I do not remember So I remember the invite. I don't remember that it was maybe a chance that it wouldn't end up happening.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? Because that also speaks to memories and kind of how memories form, and that will actually gravitate towards certain things. And when we think of the memories of our lives and the narratives that we tell ourselves, sometimes with certain negative memories, we'll hold on to those, and then others will also jettison too as well, just to kind of keep that consistency.
And it really is the intensity of the emotion that predicts if you're going to remember it. And so for me, that was a very intense thing to have, caused disappointment. That wasn't something I was okay with.
So interesting, Jeremy, that you say that, because from that time, all I remember is the actual trip itself and a whole bunch of the memories there. So something that was a big event for you, feeling shame, guilt, whatever it is that you're feeling, that your adult brain is now remembering that emotion. And I was in the same situation. I was the one you were talking to. I don't remember that part at all.
Isn't that curious? The interesting thing is we didn't really know each other that well, a bit. And then Mano came on this trip, and we were just inseparable after that. We spent at least some time, almost every single day together, all the way through grade 12 and through when I end up leaving home.
Wow. So really, I'm hearing that really speaks to, when it comes to attachment, really how important those natural bonds are, and especially in teenage years when you need to find, I'm sitting back and I'm thinking about, the groups that we have and how that really almost provided both of you stability.
Yeah, I told you. And I wonder how much of it is just straight luck as kids versus as adults. We have the ability to create our own luck a little bit, right? We can be a bit more specific or a bit more intentional. But so much of who we've become, I think, sometimes just happens with with a little idea. You decided to go invite a guy. I doubt that you'd analyze this and really thought about, creating a tribe or doing this. You probably just thought, hey, this sounds like a good idea, somebody to play cards with instead of me having to chat with my parents during the whole trip, or whatever your motivation was. It probably wasn't a super intentional one, unless I'm wrong here, Jeremy.
No, I totally hear you, for sure. And it's amazing how those little things just make a really massive difference in your life, because there's like a nucleus of people that we built around us, and we were constantly playing sports, or we were constantly doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they say on average that a human being can only remember about, I think it's 250 faces. And they have 3 different zones in which people can kind of have of closeness. And if you're they say it takes, if you're not in contact with somebody for a year, they can move from your most inner ring to your most outer ring. So even though we can have those 250 contacts, it's sort of the repeated contact that kind of keeps those strong and those vital. And that almost kind of speaks to where we're at today when it comes to social media, where we can have all of these connections, but how many of them are truly vital? And where do you really find your tribe in the world that we live in today?
Sure. And not to diminish the usefulness of having connections online, but recognizing that we have an innate need to have proximity.
Absolutely.
That proximity is foundational when it comes to attachment and our wellness. Yeah. So I'm curious then, like the way in which you kind of developed in that stage of your life. You feel like it was the smart guy that developed in that part of your life, and it's so curious because the way in which I would know you. I certainly see you as intelligent. That's not kind of the defining thing I would have seen about you, though. Oh, so I'll tell a quick Menno story. So here we go. So we just finished playing football, which we did a lot, and Menno lived at the edge of Raymond, just on the other side of the golf course. And so I was giving him a ride home, and he had the football in his hands, kind of flipping it about, and the passenger window was open. So he looked at me, and then he threw the ball out the window.
Go get it, Jeremy.
That's pretty random.
So apparently, perhaps some of the funny guy was still around.
So with Jeremy, like it was really, you were able to access all parts of yourself. You didn't just have one primary status, but the whole chorus line was on stage, and the funny guy just said, "Oh, I'm gonna take the football now and throw it that way."
A pretty random experiment, though.
And then I remember a few times actually where he might have been quiet when I first met him, but there's times I'd be like, "Oh man, like I can read your thoughts. Just don't speak, man. Don't speak, Menno. I know you want to speak. It's a bad idea. Don't speak.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Resist the urge."
The interpersonal of neurobiology, like that's where like the idea of mind reading almost comes in.
No, totally. I got you for sure. You get so attuned that you know what that other person's like.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, you can read them really well.
Yeah, we're not turning into Counselor Troy. Just,
in fact, one other mental story. So, I had just come back from spending 2 years as a missionary. We were reconnecting, and I'd been playing basketball and had rolled my ankle really bad. So I was on crutches, and we were over at the Raymond pool. Menno's girlfriend was a lifeguard there, and some parent, a kid had got kicked out for inappropriate whatever they were doing wrong, and some parent came just looked like they were turning into the Incredible Hulk or something. They're ready to rip somebody's head off, and there's Menno's girlfriend behind the counter and one other lifeguard, and so then this guy's all angry, and then Menno just jumps in the middle, right? It's like, Well, what do you think you're doing? You think you can just come and do this? You think it's okay for you to act like this? And then he's like, well, what are you going to do about it? And Menno's like, well, we're going to stop you. And so here I am, like, oh boy, this guy, he is not rational. And apparently neither is Menno. and I actually was getting ready to use my crutch as a weapon.
Lightsaber.
You're gonna have to bust someone over the chops, maybe, but it didn't come to that.
Oh, that is funny. Funny. Hey, so I've got a question for you guys then.
Yes.
So, tribes, they affect us. How can you tell that you're in a bad tribe, or you want to improve your tribe? Like, how do you even recognize that what they're feeding you is just bad, and you're just going along with it because that's all you know?
Yeah, and well,
did you want to take this one first, Trent, or did you want me to?
Well, you can go first, man.
Your So this actually harkens back to a question you asked earlier. I actually pinned that in my mind because you asked a question that was really twofold. One was about yourself in terms of understanding your foundation, and how is it that I get into a healthy tribe. I never really asked or answered that other question. It's really similar in terms of what you're asking right now, and so the first thing I would say is that as adults, we don't typically choose our tribes very much. That is, we have default spots we fall into. Where is it that we connect? We connect because we're at a work environment, and we just find out a way in which we fit into this. And lots of times, actually, we don't like it. We don't like people that are in that environment. We don't like attitudes. We don't like different things about it. And so we put boundaries up there. We actually become, to a certain degree, not authentic. That is, I need in this environment to act a particular way because it's the appropriate way for me to act. And that's functional as long as it's not held on to too often. That is, you got to have a space in which you are authentic, or else you're not going to be healthy. And so part of that being first recognizing we're generally not really choosing our tribes. We're just falling into whether that is a church community that I'm a part of, or if it's my work or whatever. So some of it, I think, comes to a position around, let me have proximity with people that I have sameness with. So what is something that I am connected to? What is it that I love? So as an example from your life, you love tennis.
Right.
And so you connect into this community. You have like-minded people that have a shared process, sameness, and then it can build into something in which you feel belonging. And that belonging is going to make you or help you to be well, in which I know that I'm accepted in this place for who I am. I don't have to wear a mask.
Well, and I think that's a really good point, is that no matter where we are in many situations that we all, God, I'm reflecting back on The Mask. What is it? 1994 with Jim Carrey. Did you ever watch that?
Oh,
movie?
yeah, for sure.
Do you remember
his authentic self came out tenfold?
Well, yes. What was it? It was the doctor played by Ben Stein. That was the title of the book, The Masks We Wear.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
As if you remember that detail. That's ridiculous.
Okay.
Whew, that was great, Trent.
Yeah. No, thank you. No, and like, just to get kind of back to Jeremy's point, and I think for a lot of us too, like, it's not just about sameness, but you also have to kind of think to yourself, even if you do have that sameness and that connection, kind of going back through and kind of doing sort of that inner reflection and saying to yourself, even if you are in a group of people that do have similar qualities, also saying, what is the environment like, and how do I feel after coming there? Is that something that recharges me, or is that something that takes away from me?
And then it becomes about boundaries. Like, for example, I've thought about this many times. Let's say two people, both going to therapy. One of them has some significant interpersonal concerns in terms of dramatic processes, ability to connect in a healthy way, what is the therapist going to tell that person? They're going to say, we need you to connect and get support and have expanded connections. Now, we got another person who is attending therapy, and they're talking about that first individual that's dramatic. And what is the therapist going to say to them? You need to have boundaries. You need to have this person less a part of your life. You see, this is like, it's curious, interesting.
Yeah, like when I hear that, all I can think of is sort of the all or nothing theory. It's like you're either all connected or you're not. Whereas I know, Jeremy, one thing that you always talk about with people is sort of your kidney analogy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which I love that, like where it's the nephrons of the kidney, where some are porous, some are completely porous, some are semi-porous, and then some are completely opaque. And it's kind of like, that's where getting back to sort of the rings of people in your life.
Balance.
Yeah, the three different areas. Where are those people in your orbit? If you're the sun, how are you going to maintain your solar system in balance for yourself so everything's healthy?
So if I could come back to that position about the kidney, because I think that's explain that a little bit. Your kidney functions in a way in which when there's too much water, then the boundaries inside those tubes in your kidneys change. Too much water means it's going to let more water out so that it keeps balance. And if you don't have access to a lot of water, then those tubes are going to change so that more water is absorbed back into your body. And it's like a really good example of understanding that when you talk about boundaries, we're not talking about setting a boundary. You're talking about understanding what the environment, what my life is giving me, and having this adjustable ability to be able to shift based on that.
Yeah, I think what you said, Trent, that word, that after an interaction, do you feel charged up after it, or do you somehow feel diminished after it? I think that is one really good way of recognizing whether it's uplifting to you or the exact opposite. Do you have more energy after spending a bunch of time with people?
Yeah. Like, I mean, like honestly, sometimes like that's what they say when you go on a family vacation. If you need to go on a vacation after your vacation, maybe it's time to evaluate, okay, what about that interaction do I need to change so that it's beneficial, not only for myself, but maybe also for other people too as well?
Yeah, for sure. Totally makes sense. In fact, the part of this that I just came to mind is you tell your story, you tell about coming to Canada and making connections. And I think, it was just as important for me, because you said as a kid, it's just luck, except that, yeah, to a certain degree, right? For me, it was a choice though. That is, I chose to connect with you. Yeah. It's just that even in doing that, it was something that was very, very beneficial for me.
Yeah, that intuition. So maybe your very first interaction could be a bit of luck, but then you get to choose. Do you keep those interactions? Do you feed into the ones that uplift you? So I think that's a good message. In the end, whether you're a kid or you're an adult, you do have that choice.
Because if we leave this alone and we just let the dice roll however they roll, we will choose to be attached, because it is a survival instinct. And it means that we'll stay attached even if it's a terrible situation.
Right.
We will do that rather than be alone.
I'm trying to remember that one quote by Virginia Satir. Basically, I think it was the idea that people prefer the misery that they know than the misery of the unknown.
So true, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, any last thoughts as we wrap things up?
Well, for me, I think, again, I really appreciate Menno coming in and opening up his life story to us, showing the various sides of himself, and really helping us to further, again, demonstrate how important attachment is, community is, and tribe is to who we are. and that no individual is an island, but rather we're a chain, and how we connect to that chain also influences us as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. The only thing I would add to that, Trent, is just keep your tribe close and work on your tribe. I don't think I've realized, I'm still learning how much it does enhance a person's life or detracts from a person's life if they're in with the wrong tribe.
And to me, it was pretty incredible to have this conversation with one of the important members of my tribe. So that was pretty awesome, Menno. Thanks for joining us.
Jeremy, Trent, thanks for having me.
This podcast is intended as general information. We are glad that you joined us today. We hope this message has been as meaningful to you as it has been to us. If you're looking for help, you can find us on Facebook at Humanizing Mental Health or at humanizingmentalhealth.ca. Humanizing Mental Health is a Plugged In Media production.